Hey everyone, how's it going? Azren the language nerd here. Hope you're doing very, very well. I just got an idea a few minutes ago that I wanted to make a quick video about, which applies to both language teachers and language learners. And it has to do with two separate concepts. Actually, I wrote the idea on my hand, so I didn't forget it. This idea has to do with two separate concepts. The first concept is relationship. One thing that's really, really big, whether you're a language learner, language teacher, it doesn't matter, is the relationship you have with every element of the language. For example, if you are a language teacher, let's say, you need to be very mindful of the relationship that the students have with you. Like, do they like you? Do they trust you? Do you like them? Do you know them well? Do they know you well? Do they, like, when you say something, are they receptive? Are they going to listen? Etc. You need to make sure the rapport between you between you and the students, you need to make sure that it's at a minimum decent. Because the better rapport and the better relationship that you have with your student or students, depending on if you teach a group or one-on-one, doesn't really matter, but the better the relationship, the more they trust you, the more they like you, etc., the more receptive they're going to be to the things that you have to say, and that's only going to accelerate their learning. So that's a really big piece. Such a big piece that actually myself, wow, that sun's really bright, but actually myself, one thing I will often do is when I first get a student, when I have a new student or a new group of students, I actually spend a disproportionate amount of time on building the relationship, even if, like, in the beginning, maybe we're doing less language stuff. Like, we're doing more stuff to build the relationship so they can trust me, we have good rapport, they like me, I like them, I know stuff about them. I spend more time on that up front. That sun's really bright. I spend more time on that up front because I know in the long term that is just so, it's just so worth it, right? So that's number one. Now, this also applies to language learners. You've got to think about what is the relationship with the language itself that you're learning. You need to make sure that you actually like the language. Like, if you push yourself too hard, or if you're trying to be too intense with it at first, or whatever, if you do anything in the beginning or in the early stages, or really any stage, that makes you not enjoy studying the language, you've now started the stopwatch, you started the timer for when you're gonna eventually quit or stop studying that language. Or even worse, maybe you won't quit or stop studying it, but you've only started the timer for when the effectiveness of your studying starts to drop. And even though you're putting in 7 hours, you're only getting 2 hours worth of productivity, 2 hours worth of actual results from the 7 hours that you put in. Does that make sense? So you've got to be very mindful of the relationship with your teacher, relationship with your language, relationship with the resources you're using. And it's actually better sometimes to maybe take an approach or do things that are not necessarily super duper extra like productive maybe with the language, but maybe they're fun and they're going to, in the long term, keep you engaged with that language. So this is a big key. And it reminded, I just thought of it recently because I was teaching a student back there, right in that building there, right? I was teaching one student. It was a one-on-one lesson. And I was thinking about it. I was thinking, like, wow, in the early, actually all the lessons today that I taught, really, the group lessons and the one-on-ones, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, in the early, probably the first couple months of lessons, it was almost too much fun. Like, we didn't really do anything overly studious, nothing that really taxed their brains, but we get along so well. We have such a great relationship. And so now when we're actually doing things that are difficult, they're okay with it. They're actually, we're in a place in our lessons. They like me. Our relationship's at a point where I go, hey, today we're going to go really intense. We're going to go really intensive lessons because I think it's going to be really good for you. They believe me. They go, okay, yeah, you know what? Let's do it. Yeah, let's do that. And they're really receptive to it. So that's like the first thing. Tied into this is the easiness, right? Or the difficulty. I think there's an argument to be made in many cases to reduce the difficulty of the language studies that you're doing initially. What I mean by that is take it slow and take it easy. Don't do anything that's going to be like super duper challenging in the beginning. I think for most people, you've got to work your way up to the intensity. It's kind of like you don't just, I'm going to go play badminton in a bit. I'm not going to go jump on the court and just go all out gung-ho 100% right away. I'm going to build into it over time. I'm going to warm up, then I'll like get my muscles ready, then we'll go more intense. Languages, same thing. You've got to kind of warm up to it. So yeah, just one of those things I wanted to quickly get out. The one thing I'll kind of finish on, the final note I'll finish on here, is it also is very learner dependent. Some learners are going to want to, wow, that sounds annoying. They're going to want to maybe jump into something more intense pretty quickly, and perhaps they're going to be ready for that kind of jump. It's not going to be super duper taxing. That's what they need. That's kind of where their headspace is at right now. Like that's like kind of, you know, kind of where they're at. Like if I were to jump into Portuguese, for instance, or even Hindi, actually. Hindi was a good example. When I was in India and I was taking a Hindi lesson, you know, I speak Gujarati at a decently high level, where jumping into Hindi is not that difficult because they're similar languages. They're in the same language family. I already know some stuff. So when I would go into a Hindi lesson, because I took some, we moved fast. It was pretty intense. We would go like at a very quick pace. It was probably for any other beginner in Hindi, it would have been like, whoa, what are you doing? Wow, that's so fast, so overwhelming. But just for my particular unique scenario, that's kind of what I needed and what was right for me. But generally speaking, I think you just got to put the relationship with the language, and even the teacher, if you're using a teacher, right? Relationship with the language, for sure, and the teacher, if you happen to have one, or if you are a teacher that teaches students, the relationship with the language and or teacher needs to be top of mind, and needs to make sure that it's always, or as often as possible, in a really positive place. That's just going to, in the short term, sometimes it might feel like it's not, you know, you could be being, maybe in the short term, it could be neutral. Maybe it's positive, maybe it's negative, maybe it's neutral, like it really depends. But in the long term, that's always going to be a very positive thing. So anyway, thanks for watching this video. Really appreciate it. I'm going to go get changed and everything, drive home that way, drive home, and go play some badminton. So see you guys later, and we'll chat later. Bye for now.